for years. And when I ran for the United States Senate, they said, well, why do you want a 29-year-old guy who's only been a lifeguard? Well, the truth was I was a practicing lawyer. I've been a public defender, and I had my own small law firm. The first frost, you knew what was happening. You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. You know how much it costs to make that insulin drug for diabetes? Cost. It was invented by a man who did not patent it because he wanted it available for everyone. I spoke to him, okay?
You better have helicopters ready to take those 3,000 civilians inside the green zone where I've been 7 times and shot at.
Think of Iraq because that's where my son died. Uncle Frank fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and he won the Purple Heart. And he never received it. So I got him the Purple Heart. He had won it in the Battle of the Bulge. And I remember he came over to the house, and I came out, and he said, present it to him, okay? We had the family there. I watched what happened when the kids from Parkland marched up to, and I met with them, and then they went off to up on the Hill when I was vice president. They went off the Hill to go into those neighborhoods. All those congressmen were like, no, I'm not here. I'm not here. Don't tell them I'm around. God's truth, I've traveled over 1,250,000 miles on Amtrak. And one of the conductors I know for years walked up and grabbed, said, Joey, baby, grabbed my cheek. Not a joke.
This day, 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robbins Island.
I swear to God, true story. I swear to God, true story. True story. They think I'm kidding, man.
In Davos, Switzerland, which is underway right now. The event kicked off this week with 84-year-old Klaus Schwab, he's the founder of the WEF, promising to, quote, master the future.
We couldn't meet at a more challenging time. We are confronted with so many crises simultaneously. What does it need to master the future? I think to have a platform where all stakeholders of global society are engaged.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Friday afternoon edition of News from the Pew. I am your host, Rick Barrett, where we take the news from the interwebs and distill it to make it slightly less frightening. I am joined, as always, by Steve Cunningham of CensusFidelium.com and Spiritus TV. And we have Jonathan Arrington joining us this afternoon, so I'm glad to have both of you gentlemen with me today. We do have a lot to talk about because, as the kids say, it has gone down this week. So let's get to our first. Let's just get to the elephant in the room. Not really the elephant anymore. Let's call it the bug in the room, and that is the WEF and their forum of things. So, Steve, I know you got a bunch of videos ready for us to take a look at all the fun little things that took place over in Davos.
Bring these emissions down. And just to put the science in a slightly different context, people are familiar with that thin blue line that the astronauts bring back in their pictures from space. That's the part of the atmosphere that has oxygen, the troposphere, and it's only 5 to 7 kilometers thick. That's what we're using as an open sewer. If you could drive a car straight up in the air at interstate highway speeds, you'd get to the top of that blue line in 5 minutes. And all the greenhouse gas pollution would be below you. We're still putting 162 million tons into it every single day. And the accumulated amount is now trapping as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs exploding every single day on the Earth. That's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs and sucking the moisture out of the land and creating the droughts and melting the ice and raising the sea level and causing these waves of climate refugees predicted to reach 1 billion in this century. Look at the xenophobia and political authoritarian trends that have come from just a few million refugees. What about 1 billion? We would lose our capacity for self-governance on this world. We have to act. So in answer to your question, I would say We have to have a sense of urgency much greater than we have yet had, and we need to make some changes.
Last time we were here in Davos in the winter, it was January 2020.
Yeah.
And I saw you at that point, and we were at a breakfast right over here at the Belvedere.
I remember.
And you came up to me in this small room, and you were talking about how you had actually, you were working on a vaccine for COVID. And at that point, COVID-19 didn't even really exist in our minds. We were just hearing about them.
I think the World Economic Forum, again, is showing prescience and leadership. They have, with the U.S. National Academy of Medicine, Victor Zhao, and CEPI, set up a regional vaccine manufacturing collaborative to develop a framework for regions that want to expand their vaccine manufacturing capacity. And we'll have a closed-door meeting later today to talk about how that framework can be improved and then shared with regions that are interested in increasing their manufacturing capacity. And Minister Moreno, I think, might want to talk about that a little bit later. But the other root cause of the inequity was scarcity. Where there is scarcity, there will be inequity. And that's the driver of the 100 Days mission. This is CEPI's goal that we've articulated, which has now been embraced by the G7 and G20, to accelerate vaccine development even over and above what was achieved in 2020. To be able to deliver vaccines to new threats within 100 days. That would give us a fighting shot of preventing pandemics altogether.
At our party conference in the autumn of last year, we set our plans for what we call our Green Prosperity Plan, going towards clean power generation by 2030. And that's ambitious. That means, and here at Davos has been an opportunity for me to speak to many CEOs of businesses and investors who would partner us if we're in government to do that. There does need to be a transition. Obviously, it will play its part during that transition, but not new investment, not new fields up in the North Sea, because we need to go towards net zero. We need to ensure that renewable energy is where we go next.
Bring you in on this. First of all, are you surprised that your Prime Minister didn't show up to Davos?
Yes, I think our Prime Minister should have showed up at Davos. I absolutely do. And one of the things that's been, impressed on me since I've been here is the absence of the United Kingdom, and that's why it's really important that I'm
who's in charge at this point?
Chancellor Rachel Reeves is here as a statement of intent that should there be a change of government, and I hope there will be, the United Kingdom will play its part on the global stage in a way I think it probably hasn't in recent years. And so that's my opportunity to say why we're here. I do think the Prime Minister should be here, having these discussions, having the meetings that I've been having. I actually think it should be a catalyst for all of us to say, well, come on, there is a challenge in relation to the climate crisis. That's been there for a very long time. But the Ukraine conflict has brought that into sharp focus, and we need to stop seeing it as just a challenge. Say, well, it's actually the single biggest opportunity we've been given for a very long time to transition, to take the jobs and opportunities of the future. I do think that that requires a different view of the state, and this is something that will happen if we have a Labour government in the United Kingdom, because what we want is an active state that is not saying, well, look, we're going to suck it all up to the centre, not saying we're going to leave it to the private sector, but a state that partners with the private sector to take these opportunities.
Very important point that you are addressing. My daughter, 24, inspired me and said that, how can you advocate for these zero carbon value chains if you still eat meat? And so I stopped eating meat. Now the math would say, well, you need to stop eating meat 11 years to compensate for a flight to Thailand. Yes, but if 1 billion people stop eating meat, I tell you it has a big impact. Not only does it have a big impact on the current food system, but it will also inspire innovation of food systems. And I predict that we will have proteins not coming from meat in the future, They will probably taste even better. So why are we trying to mimic meat if we can have a better taste? They will be zero carbon and much healthier than the kind of food that we eat today. That is a mission that we need to get on. I can inspire you to maybe look at an organization called EAT, easy to remember.
I think there's a huge impetus now for a national digital infrastructure. Digitization in healthcare is, I think, one of the great game changers. We should be helping countries to develop a national digital infrastructure, which they will need with these new vaccines. And then, finally, it's also about showing people and showing the political leadership that you can make a positive difference to your healthcare system by adopting these measures, because they've got an impact beyond. You need to know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been. Some of the vaccines that will come on down the line will be multiple. There'll be multiple shots. So you've got to have, for reasons to do with the healthcare more generally, but certainly for a pandemic or for vaccines, you've got to have a proper digital infrastructure. And many countries don't have that. In fact, most countries.
Inside your head, where does this, explain where we'll be in 1 year, where we'll be in 5 years, and where you would estimate would be in 10 years in the complexity of thought and emotional understanding that you can have from sophisticated brainwave readers.
So, I am a futurist. I'm not a perfect predictor of the future, but I'll give you my 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. So focusing in the world of wearable technology as opposed to implanted technology. And I do believe that within many of our lifetimes, we'll see healthy people using implanted brain technology as well. Then we can decode complex thought. But wearable brain technology, I think in 1 year, we will be largely where we are now, but with much better form factor technology. So many companies are launching these earbuds and headphones this year that have sensors that are built in. One of the things that has limited the widespread adoption of the technology until now has been that.
By the way, if you don't know who that lady is, if you ever saw the Fourth Industrial Revolution video, the Great Reset first video, she's in it. When they're talking about trying to read your mind is the last thing that they'd be able to get. They need to read your brain and all that. They've been working on it for multiple years now. Just to give you a little context on who she is.
Yeah.
You have to wear something like across your forehead. Most of us aren't going to do that. But when it's the same device that you're using to take calls from and also to listen to music from that also is picking up brainwave activity, it's integrated into your everyday life. Because of that, the decoding will largely be in the same place a year from now, but as healthy people in a widespread way start to have their brainwave data collected, the insights that we can gain through pattern recognition will exponentially increase and pretty quickly. So 5 years from now, what we can actually decode will be massively increased from where we are today, simply because we'll have a much greater data set from which we can actually create those correlations. Again, that's frightening but promising, because think about most of neurological disease and suffering are those disruptions of brain activity, which we'll start to be able to pick up. 10 years from now, even wearable technology, I don't think is going to decode complex thoughts, but it is going to decode a lot more. And already, gamers have figured out, for example, while a person is wearing a headset, how to prime a person through their brainwave activity to be able to decode their PIN number and their home address. So you don't have to have your full complex thought decoded to reveal your thoughts, right? It gets at what we think thought is.
And how do you decode somebody's PIN number? You flash a series of numbers and see how their brain reacts to them?
So you have recognition memory signals that are preconscious and subconscious, and this is part of why it's been used, for example, by governments to interrogate criminals. Do you recognize this potential co-conspirator? Do you recognize, this murder weapon? Those preconscious signals, like what we call the P300 wave or the N400 wave, these are before you even consciously process information. So you could prime it with a number and then see if a person recognizes it. And you can do it without them realizing that that's what you're doing.
So will all of our passwords be cracked first by this or quantum computing? Hard to tell. All right.
I think we're moving past.
Video is a video of the principle of the line, which is really the revolution in urban design that NEOM is pioneering.
Before I go on, I want to tell you I was wrong about the 15-minute city. They're shooting for 5.
And we can talk a little bit more about that as we go through the rest of the panel in the session.
Yeah, I especially love the 15-minute city where they'll make sure your license plate keeps you in that area.
Yeah, so basically the way it works
never happening
it's
in Saudi
170
Arabia,
kilometers
this
long,
thing is never happening.
200 meters wide, 500 meters high. The height is from the sea level. So as you go inwards and the topography actually goes up, then the height of the actual building structure reduces until you get to the mountains where it actually, you no longer have a mirror line. The idea is about what we call zero gravity urbanism, which is not necessarily having to be linked and anchored to a ground. How can we think of cities that go vertical and not only horizontal? This has many benefits. It's 5 minutes walk from all of your needs. Each
not even 15
module
minutes
is
anymore,
800
it's 5.
meters wide, and each model will take 80,000 people on average. Obviously, some are going to be more densely populated than others. And when you do it this way, you're only 5 minutes walk away from your school, your hospital, supermarket. The other thing is that the catchment area becomes a lot bigger. The catchment area for
if we have
businesses
food deserts now
becomes
in
an
the cities,
80,000
how are they
catchment
getting
area
food into
within
these
a 5-minute walk, which, as you can understand, instead of opening many pharmacies or many stores, that one store will service a much bigger catchment area than it typically does in other cities that have, 15, 20,000 people in even dense cities, catchment areas like New York and London. The idea as well is to reduce the footprint. So imagine 9 million people living on 34
Look, it's
square
actually being
kilometers.
built in the water. He's talking
And if you
about
compare that
reducing
to other cities, it's almost the 2% of the size of London, yet taking the same amount of population at end state. The first module is going to finish in 2027, end of 2027. And as you can imagine, this is a generational project. So it will continue to go on until 2045 when the whole project is complete. We think of this as not a start and an end. This is a city that is being built. So it's being designed forever.
We built this city.
We're not talking
not
about
on rock and roll.
implanted devices of the future. I'm talking about wearable devices that are like Fitbits for your brain. It used to be that there was very little we could tell from EEG activity. But already, using consumer wearable devices, these are headbands, hats that have sensors that can pick up your brainwave activity, earbuds, headphones, tiny tattoos that you can wear behind your ear. We can pick up emotional states like, are you happy or sad or angry? We can pick up and decode faces that you're seeing in your mind. Simple shapes, numbers, your PIN number to your bank account.
Did I black pill everyone yet?
Yeah, right. Now that everybody's completely running off the deep end, you can't even eat meat today, so that's great. Can't even rejoice with that because it's a Friday. But it's on and on and on. Their grandiose plans that they have for us. John, when you take a look at all of these things that they want to try and impose on us, what are your thoughts on any of this stuff, from Al Gore's ranting and raving about water bombs or whatever the case may be, to the singular city that the Arabs are not going to be able to build, but talking about it? Your thoughts, John?
Well, my thoughts go in two maybe parallel directions, but they might seem somewhat distant. So one is that it's obviously diabolic in the sense that it wants to take away from what is naturally human. That is, things that are proper to us as human beings. They want to either pretend that we're brilliant Catholic thinkers have been saying this sort of stuff for a long time. I'm just copying and pasting what they said. Okay, this isn't new with me. They want to either make us angels or animals. Okay. And that's just an easy way of saying it in English, right? Just kind of split bifurcation. We're somewhere in between those two, is the way some philosophers will put it, right? Because we're rational animals, so we share something, our intellect, with the angels. We share most of our bodily features with the higher animals, all right? But they want to make us either mere animals in most of our moral choices, or they want to make us like angels in the things that have to do with free will. That is, because angels have free will, but they make a decision once for all, and then there's no going back. So these WEFers, they want us to be stuck on this idea of progress without asking too many questions up front. So we'll just always be, hey, we're progressing. We don't know where to, but we said, yeah, we want progress way back when, so we can't really back up on that now. We already made the the call, and we're like angels. We just got to keep pressing forward. So yeah, that's one of my thoughts, is just the anti-human or the diabolic element of it is seen in basically the way they don't want us to be human. Okay, they either want us to be animal or angelic, diabolic, really. But you get the point there, kind of making a once for all choice. The other thing, though, that I guess I could say maybe on the little bit more conspiracy side, if you'll pardon all the scare quotes, that makes me wonder, and has made me wonder for a long, long time, especially once Klaus came out. These folks seem, and Tucker said something like this earlier this week that kind of, how should I say, it brought this back to my mind. They seem almost too easy to parody. So really with them, my biggest or my bigger concern out of the two is that this is all some sort of smokescreen for what they're actually doing right now. I'm not saying that they're likely or even potentially doing something different than what they're claiming to do, but these people say such ridiculous and revolting things to I would say over 90% of the population. That's my guess. I know probably 90% of the population on its current trajectory is headed to hell in a handbasket. That the way that all the world's cultures are right now, it's that grim, it's that dire. That is just the general way of humanity is not pretty right now. But still, there's enough of the human element, I think, in the overwhelming majority of people. Let's say over 3/4 of people in the world. I would say I'd be a little bit sure about that number. Would be so revolted by the almost everything that Steve just played there, that was said by these folks, that I really wonder whether or not these folks are for real, or if there's somebody else behind it, or if there's just a whole lot more that meets the eye, and that this is all more or less, or most of it's just really a smokescreen to try to draw our attention away from what's going on here. What's actually going on. So I guess that's that's in general my two. One is a more, I guess, philosophical, theological judgment of what they're saying, but the other is just on the more practical, mundane level. Could anybody really think that these folks are for real? That's just what comes to mind. I'd love to hear y'all's take on what I'm suggesting there too.
Well, let's get Steven on this now too, because he is our on the ground reporter, if you will, for the WEF and all things WEF. So, and then I'll throw my answer to your question there, John. But let's get Steven. Steve, you were following this closer than anybody. So, what's your takeaway, my friend?
Yeah, unfortunately, I like self-torture, I guess. Yeah, I mean, well, start with back in the day when it started out. I got the books right here, read through all of them, watched the videos, listened to their podcasts. Everything they're saying has been the same thing they've been spewing off for the last 2-3 years, well, even longer, 4 or 5 years, because I mean that video with that one lady talking about the capturing the thoughts, that's in the, as I mentioned in the thing, that's in the original 4IR video. That's the fourth industrial revolution right there. Everything being in their minds. That's the Pentopolis video I played before, and I got on the YouTube channel. It's under Resistance Podcast, Great Reset. Just look it up, type it in. Michael Lofton, who's pretty much the only guy in the Catholic world that had the guts to have me on to talk about this. I played it during his show on there, and that was back 15 years ago when they're sitting there. There's a guy sitting with a thing on his head, and he's basically like the Borg, in control of all these machines with his thoughts. And you're not eating meat because, as the lady says in the video, it's not your birthday. Why would you have that? I mean, everything is about carbon. They're making this thing about carbon. Obviously, it's all about climate change and the Green New Deal and all this. They've been after it for a while. It's what Mark Moreno has been talking about on Climate Depot. It's green on the outside, commie red on the inside. Here's what's going on. The Dutch city becomes world's first to ban meat advertisements in public. There's other areas that are going down the same way, trying to ban meat. Here's Oxford. Remember them a couple weeks ago? They were the first city to really push for the 15-minute city. And here's the people fighting back, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it needs to be done 100%.
Yeah, they're blocking the area.
The aim, to make it hard to install a new one. This footage, obtained exclusively by ITV Meridian, is one of hundreds of incidents of vandalism in Oxford's local traffic neighbourhoods. Those removing the barriers often don't even wait for the cover of night. Now, new figures show just how much this kind of activity is costing. Delivery drivers, some filmed flouting the rules.
Condone it, but I can understand it because they're not listening to us, and that's where the anger's coming in. You know, that and people being stuck in traffic. There is no democracy in Oxford.
I mean, good on them. I hope everyone does that. When these come to your city, you should do this. Here's Scotland. Scotland plan to implement 20-minute neighborhoods nationwide in Scotland. So this is what was the day? The 20th? This is 3 days ago. So I've had guys in the professional Catholic media mock me about this, laugh at me. This is happening whether you like it or not. So my thing about this is, what are we going to do about it? All right, we see what the WEF is doing, what they're saying, all this stuff. This is coming down the pipe. What they say, like they were talking about, I didn't play the clip, internet cyber attacks. They've had that planned out 2 years ago when they had Cyber Polygon. Everything's been tabletop. All they got to do is flip the switch and let's go live. All this stuff is coming out. What are we going to do about it, solution-wise on this? You better start thinking about, before it gets too bad, moving closer to a parish. You got a housing crisis coming up. They are going to crash. Everyone, their brother sees that coming. Maybe start thinking about moving closer to a parish. Again, what they're talking about is what we talk about, like John Signor in his books, Destruction, Restoration of Christian Culture, having a parish in the middle and people living around it. You see that with the monasteries and things like that in the past. You have these little cities like this. That's a good thing. What these guys are doing is force and control and power. As Jonathan was bringing up about what they were doing. My thing is they just want power to control everything you do. Hence what CBDC is. You get CBDC going. Then you got the programmable money. They let you know what you can use it for, what you can't use it for, when you can use it, how much you can use, how long you have to use it, and if you don't say the right thing or do the tip your hat to the New World Order idea, like in China, if they say you go out without a muzzle on, they see you because facial recognition, 4IR. I mean, like those TV shows like with Jim Caviezel was on, I can't remember, Person of Interest. All that stuff with the cameras all over the place, that was years ago. They've upgraded. Then they were upgraded. Even now, it's even worse. You get cameras everywhere. You see that. You have people with Ring on your doors. Amazon trucks have cameras all over. You can't go anywhere without your facial recognition being.
Don't forget the one on your phone, Steve.
People use that. Yeah, I remember people during an Uber days, they were open their phones up with their face. I'm never going to do that. You got Facebook asking for 10 years, 10 years later, 10 years now, photos, which all that was to help in facial recognition and getting in the system and all that jazz. You got the smart machines listening to everything we do. So if we talk about, I remember I had King Dude in the car one time. We were driving to my brother's his first mass in Gower, and he brings up not keto, but one of the diets. I forget what it was. Maybe it was
paleo or something like that.
Yeah, maybe it was keto. I think I got bombarded with nothing with keto email, junk mail for the next few days. They hurt. I remember being in a car with a guy. I was taking him to the airport. I asked him, "Where are you going?" He goes, "Chicago." Sure as anything. If I'm lying, I'm dying. The next song that came on Pandora was Chicago. They're listening to everything we do anyway. So we're being corralled in a sense, you want to use that word. And on top of that, again, goes back to CBDC, digital ID, digital currency. When all this hits that, game over. I had a friend of mine send me a thing about hey, I got a lot of money now. I'm thinking about buying gold. What do you think? I go, okay, great. How are you going to use that gold to buy eggs? Why don't you just use that to buy chickens, to have your own eggs so you can grow your own food and then work together like this in a community. You don't have to have everything in your backyard, but if you have a community with a parish in the middle, because salvation, all this going on does not keep us out of heaven unless we wanted to, but it's for food and all that. Get a group together. Somebody has a cow, somebody has chickens, somebody's growing veggies, someone's growing fruit. Work together as a team, a unit, and you'll be all right on this. So say they take away all our money. Great. Okay, they won't let you run electricity. Okay, Figure out how to keep warm. Figure out how to keep cold, get cooler. Figure out all this other stuff now, plan ahead. So when this does come, because it is coming, you have an idea of what to do. You're not going to get caught with your pants down, and especially at parishes. I don't know how, if 15-minute, 20-minute cities, if you're a TLM fan, we can get into that later, and you're driving 45 minutes away to mass to get the mass, or 60 minutes, I'm waiting for one of these professional guys that come out and start yelling at Rome and yelling at the Pope. I haven't gotten one of them to ask to give me an answer. What's your solution to this? Those guys in Rome, the old guys that are going after the old priests that are hating on the tradition right now, they will die. Our people will come back. Everything's going to be okay down the road. Long term, we win. What are you going to do when this comes down? Because no one's looking at the state level. Well, you can't control stuff like this. Are you thinking about running for office so that none of this can go on? Are you thinking about going in the governorship, gubernatorial races? Are you thinking about getting into state houses? How you get out of that? You get people, Catholics, running for office, like-minded, and when you get there, you reject this stuff that's coming down. Hey, this ain't happening in my backyard. Because there right now, I know Raleigh, they're talking about the EV cars. Every state is. Scotland, there was 4 or 5 cities 2 weeks ago talking about the 20-minute cities. Now you got your first country that's talking about. That's added to a 6. You don't think that your city's talking about this? You don't think your state, wherever you are, they are all talking. This is the only group that every country on the planet is doing the exact same thing at the exact same time in the exact same playbook. That's no coincidence.
No, not at all. And of course, I can actually agree. In Texas, with Elon Musk here, and everybody loves Buc-ee's because Buc-ee's is the greatest place in the world. But even Buc-ee's, my wife and I, we went there this week, and the guy from Buc-ee's, who's supposedly a staunch Republican, he took the EV money, the outsides of his massive parking lots. He's got like 35, 40 EV chargers. And I looked at my wife and I said, how in God's green earth are you going to be able to charge 10, 15, 20 electric cars at once? Because the amount of power that you would need to actually do that, it's just it'll be a disaster like we're seeing in our chat.
Let me give a good shout out to Bishop Strickland. His Excellency is busting up the World Economic Forum on Twitter right now. Thanks, because I don't know anybody else that's doing it, and he's been calling it out left and right the last few days. So good on him for doing that. Completely agree.
Bishop Strickland's always at least one of the few to push back on that. And it is whatever you want to think in this regard, whether the WF is a front or whatever the case may be, they're still letting their hand be known. So you have time. You have time to get your things in order, whether that's your arrangements to go to church, whether that's your arrangements on how you're going to get your food or where you're going to live. A lot of us are still too spread out. And for one reason or another, we're just kind of putting it off, and not preparing. Even a little bit of preparing will put you in a better place than not preparing at all. So it's very interesting to see what is coming out of the WEF, what they're willing to admit. And remember, all you people who love Elon Musk, he's a brain implant chip guy. He's a transhumanist. He goes along with all this stuff. He may be calling him out right now, but he's getting funded from somebody. So you have to take that into regard. But moving on, let's take a look at one of the most favored actors of the WEF, or somebody who implemented their plan perfectly, Miss Jacinda Ardern. Ardern. She's leaving. She's getting out of the game, ladies and gentlemen. It's announced that she would be resigning as Prime Minister of New Zealand no later than February 7th, which people were absolutely shocked to see. But she's already done her job. She's done enough damage that she can leave because she's already set the culture. She's already reworked the culture of the people of New Zealand to give up their guns after the incident that took place there, the masks and the jabs and all of these other kinds of things. So she's done her job. So it's time for her to exit because the culture in that country has been absolutely changed.
Fox News alert and some good news. The appalling Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern,
oh good, at least Tucker can't say either.
Tormented her citizens, has just announced she is leaving office. Here she was moments ago.
Announcing that I will not be seeking re-election.
Cry about it.
and that my term as Prime Minister will conclude no later than the 7th of February.
Most authoritarian leader that country has ever had, and no one else comes close. An appalling abuser of human rights of her own people. She, of course, earned the admiration of Western leaders, including former CIA Director Michael Hayden, by ushering in an era of near totalitarianism in New Zealand. She shut down the entire country over a single COVID case. She told everyone to stay in their bubbles. She told citizens to inform on their neighbors by calling the police if they saw them outside. I'm not making this up, by the way. We kept a video record. Here's some of it.
Stay local and do not congregate. Don't talk to your neighbours. Please keep to your bubbles. It comes down again to those very simple principles. We know from overseas cases of the Delta variant that it can be spread by people simply walking past one another. So keep those movements outside to the bare minimum.
If someone refuses in our facilities to be tested, they have to keep staying. So they won't be able to leave after 14 days. They have to stay on for another 14 days. So it's a pretty good incentive. You either get your tests done and make sure you're cleared, or we will keep you in a facility longer. So I think most people will look at that and say, I'll take the test. You can now see family and friends again in their homes and use the bathroom inside. Luxury.
What are the chances she was a puppet of the Chinese government? We don't have enough evidence to prove that, but we would rate that as about 100% likely. Fortunately, there is a...
So I would absolutely think that she was a puppet for the Chinese and a puppet for the WEF, a puppet for whoever you want to call. The fact that every single check mark that was attempted by everybody else, whether it was passports, lockdowns, COVID camps, whatever you wanted to have, the New Zealand population went through. Small, nice, isolated island, smaller population, much easier to conduct experiments like that. So, John, your thoughts on the Wicked Witch of New Zealand finally moving on? She accomplished what she needed to accomplish?
Yeah, I guess at heart I'm a pessimist, and that's why I'm going to say what I'm about to. Is that like with kind of Biden's current troubles, and with a few other world leaders, state leaders like Cuomo there in New York, I have this sense that since Satan's not stupid, Satan's diabolically brilliant, that the idea is truly to corral people, as Steve had said, I think a few minutes ago. But in order to do that effectively, or more effectively, you got to play with our emotions and our fears. So you get these crazy statements, even if the people themselves are basically just more or less like Hollywood actors being rewarded to say these kinds of crazy things. To have a person who says that, you can kind of set up as a scapegoat. All right, if you see what I mean. And then say, well, at least we're not like so-and-so, fill in the blank. At least we're not as stupid as Biden. At least we're not as crazy as this lady was. So, I mean, got what's coming to her? Well, sure. If she's anything more than just kind of a Hollywood bot of sorts to give a caricatured version of what the far left. I mean, even the craziest of the crazies during the crazy time of the scamdemic, were any of them quite to the extent of craziness that she is? Anybody that you know personally? I know a lot of people that bought into this craziness, but that would have suggested even half the things she just did in those clips we just saw. I mean, maybe my friend circle's too small, but I don't think so. So that again, I'm a little bit worried about smoke screens right now that are playing with our already fragile emotions and psychological state. There you
go. Well said. Steve, your thoughts on Jacinda riding off into that good night?
As long as Nuremberg 2.0 has her name on it. It's kind of like a couple weeks ago, was it months ago, when everyone came out saying or that one article saying, yeah, we messed up. My bad. Can we move on? Yeah, we can forgive, but we can't forget on this. I mean, y'all just gaslit the whole planet for a couple years, screwed up everyone's lives, pretty much killed whoever you wanted to kill. Yeah, you don't get away with that. Obviously, they will pay for it this world or the next, but this can't happen again. Just like that clip with the guys in Oxford. This cannot ever happen again over this. I mean, they're trying to gin it up. I mean, obviously, if you look on Clown Planet, and I'll have it on for maybe tomorrow when I put it together, they're rolling it back out. There's colleges that are doing the same thing. There's cities that are doing the same thing. I told people back in 2020, this ain't over. And people were like, oh, this will be over the election. Hey, and here we are in 2023, still talking about it. This is a 10-year plan for this, 2030 agenda. And they got 2050. They got everything out there. We think it's just going to be over in the next couple of days or anything. These guys are in for the long haul. They don't get together in Davos just for giggles, just to, hey, let's over here and yuck it up for a while and no. These are plans that they're doing. She's just one of the puppets in there. She did what she got. She wanted out, or is her time up? Another one will come in. It's kind of like the reverse idea of our apostolic succession. Another one, they will take place. The next one, they will take place. I forget the verse right off the top of my head. His office, another will take. Same thing with them. It's the opposite. It's kind of like what Jonathan brought up with the devil being not being stupid. He does the opposite of what we do. These guys are doing that. I mean, what is the religion? Green energy, green this, recycling. That video that John Stossel came out about the religion of recycling. People go through recycling like it's a religious habit. You have to take off this. They have to do this on these certain days. They put it together, they throw it away, and all this, and it does absolutely nothing. It actually causes more problems than it does, and people believe it anyways. I still got to do it. And if you tell them, they lose their minds. I remember one thing what Jonathan was saying about having a small circle of friends. I don't have anybody. I knew a couple people that shocked me on how weird that went off the rockers. I remember pulling up to a drive-through in Gastonia, North Carolina, and there was zero in the county that even had the sniffles. She was dressed up like she was going to a nuclear fusion reactor, and wanted to hose me down, spray down the bag I was giving and me, and then told me she was going to see me at my funeral if I didn't, take whatever she had to wipe my hands with, and in the 30 seconds of me and her talking. I'm going, what is going on here? You talk about surrounded with zombies. I was utterly losing my mind during this time because I'm one of those that I can't stand TSA, and the entire world became TSA. Kind of still is in a sense, not as bad now, but the foundations are still there. They're still putting in the emergency orders. That will never be rescinded. I mean, 9/11, they do that every year. Re-sign the 9/11 orders. You still get TSA at the airport. Why? Because what do people say? Well, at least it makes me safe. What's going? It's the same. That was a little one. Now this got bigger. This is kind of like a USA thing that happened there. This got bigger globally because everyone the same thing. The same blueprints are over everywhere. All they got to do is flip the switch. Bam. What if you get another, a sniffle thing come out, a cold thing or whatever? All of a sudden they're talking about triple jabs now. Everything that just come in. Let's get everyone in here. And everyone, from Hamlin, who still ain't playing, by the way. How many people have died since that day? But nobody cares about it because they weren't on Monday Night Football. 17, 12-year-olds, kids, high school, college, Air Force, all these guys just dropping. Now they got the media. There was at the FC Charlotte. I don't know what FC stands for, by the way. Some soccer player. I don't consider soccer a sport. Sorry about that. In my English, anybody from England, if you can't use your hands, it's not a sport to me. Anyways, there's in Charlotte here. There was a guy. The headline was died suddenly. Okay, now if you read the story, he died in a boat crash. But they're using now died suddenly, which I'm not a big fan of that. Documentary that came out because one, it was that whole group that came out saying that the Vatican's putting in the snake oil in the water, snake DNA in the water. I mean, come on now. There was an anti-Catholic doc that was on that side with him. And they've also come out showing that those videos and photos are from 2017, 2016 that they put in and they dubbed the audio underneath. So there's been some kooky things in there. Now, if you typed in died suddenly, you find all this stuff debunking the documentary and not the people anymore. And this guy, they put in the headlines. This was it the I can't remember it was a mainstream article. Died suddenly. He was in a boat accident, but you didn't know that. So everyone that's on the going, what's going on? What's going on? Then retweet it without even reading the article. Oh, look, jab. No, he died in a boat accident. But even the article, just like I said, the headlines, he died suddenly. They're trying to get us to knee-jerk reactions, to make us look stupid, to try to get everyone, look at these crazy kooks over here, all these died silently. You got to make sure you do your due diligence to read whatever you see. Don't share before it. Just don't share just willy-nilly. Use 10i. 10i, I use it all the time for photos to put up on the videos. You can you can get a screenshot, click 10i, put it up, upload it, and you'll see if it's a real photo or not. Kind of like that Biden with his hand on what's his face from Zelensky's butt a couple weeks ago. People thought that was real, but if you did 10i, you would show that his arm was really on his side. It was doctored. All this because we're in the era of deep fakes, fake videos. All this. Your reality is going to be so messed up in the next couple of years. You're not even going to know what's real and what's not anymore on TV.
Yeah. 100%. And if you think about it, when you look at some of the things that they prep us for, just a couple, 2 weeks ago, the FAA shut down for an entire morning. That's a preview of when they just want to launch whatever kind of cyber initiatives they want, just to ground planes when they want.
And what happened? Canada said they had a cyber attack the same day on the same thing.
Yeah.
And we're over going, no, it wasn't a cyber attack. If they say it's not one, it is.
It is one. So but these are just the little encroachments that they do. Oh, well.
Sure. How about Greta being arrested? How about arrested?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly in that regard. And so what you're looking at is the way that she gets to exit stage right because she did her job. You have more people who are thinking about COVID coming back and whatever. There was that Jimmy Fallon video a couple of weeks ago where we were singing about like B1195Z or whatever. This is a way of life. This is their religion. This is now the primary part of their religion. And you just have to be prepared for that. And they're going to integrate it into every aspect of their life. And
Trudeau, we even have, was it Manchin from I forget where, West Virginia. He's at Davos saying he's at Davos talking about getting rid of free press. Trudeau's talking about getting rid of free press. When he used taxpayer money to get rid of misinformation, all this. There's going to be a time, just like everything else. This is not going to be allowed online, Twitter, all that stuff. Again,
we have Sheila Jackson Lee from Houston. She introduced the bill. It's essentially making hate speech anything associated with whiteness. And if you think I'm lying, we have the articles out there. She introduced it. And the thing I tell people is, it's laughable when they introduce this, but that's not the point. Just like with the Green New Deal. Remember back in 2018, 2019, when we all laughed at the Green New Deal when they dropped it? Yeah, guess what's happening now? Now they're introducing it. They'll introduce it, let it get laughed at. But guess what? If it's laughed at, it's normalized. Normalized is mainstreamed. And that's what they're doing with these hate speech laws and these restrictions of speech laws going on here. And so is
it's an open conspiracy I'm
sorry, I have to laugh at Enoch making fun of my Christmas tree in the background. You know, man, I love my Christmas tree. So whatever about that. Anyway, so we have Miss Arden leaving. Let's move on to our next topic here, which is a little bit of a kerfuffle taking place in the NHL.
One thing beforehand, I just thought about this. What we were talking about, a lot of things that people were thinking about doing. Don't get into the anger and hate like shootings in Albuquerque, share target. I like the Democrats. They want people to get mad and take their frustrations and anger out. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I think that's the appropriate way to look at it. Yeah, violence is never a place you should be going to. But yeah, let's move on to our next subject here. From the NHL of all places, let's take a look at that.
I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. That's all I'm going to say. Like I said, that's all I'm going to comment on that. If you have any hockey questions, I would answer those.
Can you just clarify what? Can you clarify your religion?
Russian Orthodox.
So with the game tonight, Ivan, obviously Kevin Hayes got a hat trick, and Erasmus's first goal of the season. Can you walk us through the emotion that the team was feeling in that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
you muted.
So it takes a Russian Orthodox man to actually stand up for supposed American values, which actually, no, John, that there is a distinct clash of values there between the Russian Orthodox man and clearly the American values of pride that we have here throughout the NHL. We've seen this from MLB and all these other ones. Very interesting that it takes the Russian to do so, John.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a little bit of a natural aid as well in that, in order for Russian Orthodoxy to kind of survive or to have been reborn, I get this from straight source from Russian Orthodox themselves. There was always a skeptical eye about cooperation with the general culture of the state because of the way the Russian Orthodox hierarchy cooperated during Soviet times, right? So, I mean, if any church habitually has had a weaker, how should I say, well, track record on this, or a worse track record, it would be the Russian Orthodox, probably the weakest out of any church, even compared to the Protestant churches, and their absolute collaboration and kneeling down, bowing down before state power, or at least they'd be up on the top. But I'm sure for a variety of reasons, I don't want to take away all nod to the supernatural, the action of potentially of grace there. But I mean, there's also obviously some kind of more human and political reasons for that sort of opposition as well. But yeah, the Western churches have been in large part encouraged to cooperate with the world, and a lot of that goes back to some of the mistaken optimism for UN initiatives and various things connected with UN back in the time of Jacques Maritain and other Catholic thinkers who otherwise did some really good stuff back in the 50s, 60s. And then finally, a lot of these Catholic thinkers saw the error of their ways, but after it was too late, sadly. So, in the 70s and all, when things really started going out here, late 60s and even early to mid 70s, they saw that this enthusiasm for what various multinational bodies might do, that it was mistaken optimism. And, you might call it the kind of the first revival of Pelagianism, where it thought that natural man, unaided by grace, at least explicitly unaided by grace, was going to somehow come through for world peace. I mean, you might think, oh, the most generic of all aims, and it's just no. Satan can tolerate peace too for his ends, right? And God can encourage battle for the right motives, right? Fighting various forms of injustice, battle can be even a good thing. Fighting can be a good thing, at least given the circumstances in which one might fight. So, a sort of muddied and muddled thinking has just weakened most Western people's ability to recognize evil in any sort of sphere and then react appropriately to it. Just to say, as this guy did, no, that's a step too far. No, not doing it.
Yeah, we haven't seen that from many athletes, John. Many athletes here in America, supposing Christian athletes, at the collegiate level, whether it was Black Lives Matter with the kneeling, and Pride Night. I know there was a recent story. I think Steve and I talked about it, about the Virginia soccer player, the girl. She pushed back a little bit she was sat down because she refused to kneel, and then she got paid like $100,000 or something like that from the university. But very few Christian athletes who always talk about their Christian faith, they will just put on the jersey and they'll just go play the game, and they'll take their paycheck because they don't want to risk losing it. So of course, this action by this Russian Orthodox player did inspire some reactions.
Here's a Canada channel.
Things technically.
the
Provorov also spoke to the media after the game and echoed what Tortorella said, so I didn't feel the need to run it. This happened in baseball last year with the Tampa Bay Rays. There were 5 members of the Tampa Bay Rays who wouldn't wear a patch supporting gay rights. And Major League Baseball didn't do much. It was a story for a little bit. John Tortorella, many years ago when, racial injustice, and it still is to this day, but when Colin Kaepernick first started kneeling during national anthem, said anyone who does that on my team is going to sit. And he has a son who's an Army Ranger. So it's not like Tortorella in the past hasn't spoken on sensitive issues. The theme from the National Hockey League is hockey is for everyone, okay? The theme is not hockey is for everyone, ... unless you don't believe in gay rights, then do whatever you want.
Oh, you getting
If the National Hockey League is going to do this, if any league is going to do this, do it properly or reevaluate what you're doing. Because there's not a lot of repercussions that I'm seeing from any league. Now, it could change with the NHL. I think you find the Flyers $1 million for this.
That double chin you got there, buddy.
Figure this out.
You're rocking it pretty well.
Stop offending people on nights where it's not about that. It's supposed to be about inclusivity. The National Hockey League need to attack this and figure this out. Because what I heard last night was offensive and didn't make any sense. Because, for instance, if that was a military night, okay?
Right.
If anyone in Canada or in the States on a military appreciation night wouldn't wear a jersey pregame, do you have any idea the uproar that would have happened on that?
That person probably would have gotten an extra,
do you have any
like,
idea what happened on
bonus.
social media? It's ridiculous what would have happened.
Look, it was just a minute ago we were talking about the uproar that was happening with FIFA fever, where if you were seen with so much as a rainbow anywhere, you had to fear for your life, imprisonment, or death.
Yeah.
Seriously.
That's
So, and now here we are.
I just think the NHL has to do something here. This is not good enough. This is not good enough. Hockey is for everyone, ... unless you don't agree with gay rights is not the phrasing of this. You're either in this or you're not. And one last point. Nothing scares me more than any human being who says, I'm not doing this because of my religious beliefs. Because when you looked at people's lives, you normally say that publicly, you'd throw up at what you saw. You would throw up at what you saw. And I've seen that a million times in a lot of different ways. So don't give me that. With respect,
I can't believe you see anything. You got to put down the sandwich
because no one's
first.
perfect. All right? Don't feed me the religious beliefs line. And all of a sudden the NHL is going to back off this. The National Hockey League today needs to find that organization $1 million and reevaluate how they support gay rights. Because that is insulting. That is the #1 trending topic in Canada. That is insulting what happened in Philadelphia. And if the NHL's serious about this, they say they are. We'll see. We'll see how serious they are today. But that whole thing.
As I said, Provy did nothing wrong. Just because you don't agree with his decision doesn't mean he did anything wrong. Let me put it to you this way, in my experience. I think it was back in, was it 16, when I was asked a question about the flag, right? Would you sit if the player, that's when Kaepernick was sitting. He wasn't kneeling, he was just sitting at that time. They asked me, if a player sits, what would you do? And what did I say? I said the player would sit the rest of the game. I was wrong. I learned a lot through that experience. My feelings towards any type of protest to the flag during the anthem, it disgusts me. To this day, it disgusts me. It shouldn't be done. Those are my feelings. I can't push those feelings onto someone else. So I was wrong in saying that back then. Didn't realize I was, but as I went through it all, it was, who am I to push my feelings onto someone else? Same situation here.
Who am I to judge?
Provy's not out there banging the drum against Pride Night. He quietly went about his business. Him and I had a number of conversations to how we're going to do this. You have the team, you have him, you have all this going on. Talked to lots, went through the whole process there. He felt strongly with his beliefs, and he stayed with it. And this was discussed as prior up to. But that I'm trying to make a correlation to how I was wrong. You asked me if I was going to bench him. Why would I bench him? Because of a decision he's making on his beliefs and religion? It turned out to be a great night for Pride Night. Players were involved. The building was filled. There was awareness, everything.
There were sodomites everywhere.
Didn't actively seek out and try to make a stand against it. He just felt he didn't want to take warm-up.
Fan. Many people have sent me this story. I think the most important thing for me to say, especially
right,
involving
the way that dude's legs
anything
are crossed is
mentioning
the
the
first,
Philadelphia Flyers is "Let's go Devils."
Let's go Devils.
I am all for gaining acceptance for LGBT people in the sports community. I think there's been a long period of a lack of acceptance where people have been hiding in the closet because they feel like that culture won't welcome them. I think that it becomes meaningless to have pandering to people like me if it's mandatory, if it's coerced. If you are wearing something with a rainbow on it because you are being told that you must, it is completely empty to me. It doesn't make me feel more welcome, more empowered as a fan, anything like that. If you want to do it on your own volition, great. Thank you. We appreciate that. Being forced to do it to me, I'm just not interested in that.
Wow. So what do you think should happen next?
Nothing. Let the guy go and do his job. He has his own opinions. His comment there that we played, I thought was completely reasonable and anodyne. This is the United States of America.
Right.
He can go play hockey. We can all.
Okay, you're checked in?
Yeah, thank you.
Here's your AIDS ribbon.
No, thanks.
You don't want to wear an AIDS ribbon?
No.
But you have to wear an AIDS ribbon.
I have to?
Yes.
Yeah, see, that's why I don't want to.
But everyone wears the ribbon. You must wear the ribbon.
What you are? You're a ribbon bully.
That's right. That's right. And I think it's hysterical that Fox had their token LGBT MAP person out there to say it's fine. We don't want anybody being bullied, when that's the entire LGBT movement's MO, is to bully people and to push people and to use sports, the last place where conservative ideas were really kind of off, hands off, was now been completely destroyed by DIE and all this other kind of nonsense that you have there. So Steve, as the former and I guess current jock, your thoughts on the the entire use of sports by the left to push their agenda?
You go all the way back to Muhammad Ali. I mean, he said something about Vietnam War. Plus, they wanted to have him go into battle. He said, "That's not my war," and they suspended him for 2 years. He couldn't fight for a couple years. So people have been doing this for a while. Which John Stockton on Jason Whitlock's show the other day mentioned that, going, because he's getting beat up by Gonzaga for not bowing down to the Rona madness, and he mentions, because you have we as athletes who have a big voice need to be able to speak up like that, because on the other side, those guys like LeBron, they have no problem. You got social justice warriors that have no problem speaking up, like James and others. So where's our guys that have the virtue of have virtue in there and fortitude and et cetera, and trying to live a good life, even like the Russian right there? Where's more of those guys? We need more of those guys, like the Tampa Bay players that went in. They got cream in a type. You think of like today we're filming this on Saint Sebastian and Saint Fabian Day. It's those guys back then had a lot more punishment for speaking their mind, saying I'm a Christian, than we ever have to deal with. All right, you don't wear the jersey. All right, what are they going to do? Talk bad about you on cable TV and things like that? Outside, you would tie up a guy to the stake and shoot him with arrows for a few hours, or cut their hands off and tie them over their heads, or things of that nature. Barbecue them, whatever. Cut their heads off. No, we're worried about what people think about us. It's just like going to a restaurant. You're afraid to do a sign of the cross. Not, and that's not saying go to an LGBT rally and start, go and kick the hornet's nest and drop your knees and do something. That's different. You're asking for something to happen to you. It's that
you should just take a super soaker and just hit them all with holy water. That's what you should be doing.
We're losing the culture workers are a bunch of pansies. I mean, we're focused on arguing things that we can't do. We can't fix. I mean, we can go, if we want to finish up, we can wrap up with the potential that the article, which I've known about for a couple of months. I wasn't going to post online, but other people did. We can't do it. We can't worry about what Rome. That we got to worry about, becoming whole. You read these. Thankfully, I'll go with my little story from from the last year. The Tritium got canceled here in my area. Okay, bad thing. A good thing was a priest friend of mine came up to me and said, "Hey, come to my liturgy. It's 4th century. It's more tradition than you ever thought of." Because I wasn't going to go to Bugnini 62 from either the society guys or the Novus Ordo parishes. So I went there. Going there, I found all these, this treasure trove of things that I never heard of before, but we're Catholic. It's our history, our tradition that we haven't stumbled upon. And you get to these stories about, one priest talking about maybe all this is just throwing water on our face to wake us up, to get us activated, hey, there's more to this than just this. God is God in control? Yes. Is he in control of this? Is this his church? Why are we worried about what God can and cannot do when he can do anything? He'll protect his church. We don't have to do it for him. He has the ability. We don't. Why don't we worry about ourselves? I told a friend of mine today, have you been able to convert your neighborhood yet? No. Why do you think you need to convert Rome? If you can't convert the neighbors next to you right now, how in the wide world of sports do you think you're going to convert Rome or change the priesthood and change the bishops and all this? You can't even talk to your local friends. So we got to start focusing on becoming saints ourselves. As one priest I was reading yesterday in Liturgical Asceticism, I'm trying to get him on. He quotes this monk who the guy was talking about not being too afraid to be all in a sense. He's worried about what people think of him as fasting too much or praying too much, etc. And the catchphrase from the monk, he stands up and he puts his arms out, and the guy sees his hands kind of turning on fire in a sense. He goes, "Don't be afraid to be on fire or be all in on fire," and all this. It's why are we afraid to not be the light of the? Why are we afraid to be the light of the world? Why are we afraid to what other people think? The heck with what other people think. That's human respect. Worry about what you're going to be thought of when you stand in front of God on Judgment Day. So that should be our number one concern, right? And if we get that fixed up, maybe holiness, as what a bunch of other saints have talked about, you become a saint and it will directly affect the area around you. Now, I don't know how many people will say, I have 230,000 subscribers on YouTube. Not all of them watch the channel, but what if all of them that were watching made it up to say, well, I'm going to be the best saint I can humanly be right now. And as say 230, hypothetically, that's all these people in all these corners of the world that grows. And then that becomes our own contagion for this corrupt society that we're living. Then we become light of the world and that's the way we can fix society. What you're seeing right now, this is just more of the less, the same garbage in, garbage out. And we're not even worried about fixing that. We're worried about yelling at ourselves about what this is doing or what this is doing or what that guy's saying about this guy or this guy that's saying about this guy. We're not in the light of the world because we can't even be the light of ourselves right now. So we got to take the focus off hating each other because as God says, they'll know us by the love. We have no love. You look on Twitter. How many Catholics out there showing love to each other? Calling people's names, making memes about them, making fun of each other like this. That's not how we're doing it. There's shows that mock others, call people names, trash others on things. We think that's cool. Tell me if I'm wrong. That ain't Catholic.
Yeah, no, believe me. There's a lot of supposed Catholics that don't act all Catholic and stuff. Real quick before we get, and I'm gonna let I want John and Steve to go off on the Rome versus TLM thing. I just want one thing to notice, and then I'll jump off and I'll throw it to John. Notice the Fox newscast. Notice who the guy was, Captain Five Chin, who he was preaching to. They were all preaching to women. They were all preaching to women, and they're all enveloped in the matriarchal society that has enveloped popular culture. They all want to talk about smash the patriarchy and all this other kind of stuff. We live in a matriarchal society, and that's why they can push the LGBT and all this other kind of stuff, because it's all based on feelings and emotions and all that. So I don't have much to say on the Rome versus TLM thing. I don't know, John or Steve, who wants to jump in first on this, because I know both of you have much more to say about it than I do. We'll go with Steve. Steve, set the table, and then John, I want you to react to it. So Steve, start off.
I won't take John's thunder. He probably wants to read that little message that his priest sent out, which I thought was great. And basically, I would agree with everything that priest said. But yeah, I mean, what it's here. It's kind of hearsay because it hasn't come down from Rome yet. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. I've known about it. Yes, I've known about it for a few months from the priest that sent it to Robert Moynihan, and I wasn't going to put it now. I'm not going to tell you who it was then or now. I'm not going to tell you who it is now. I wasn't going to tell you then. And I could have put it out because I could have gotten clicks, could have made a video, could have gotten clicks and views. Hey, that ain't the way I like to operate. But all right, so what if that happens? I like to use that Jocko thing. Good. Okay. They go after the church. Good. What I just say? A bad thing happened to our area a couple months or last year, and good came out of it. There's so many people that have written me since then that have found the Father Abernathy videos, the clips, and things like that. The sermons I found since then that have been really awe-inspiring, and people are written me saying, these are fantastic. How'd you find it? Well, this is how I found them. A bad thing happened, and good came out of it. Anything happens, say Rome comes down and tells everyone in the diocese level, you have no more TLM. Okay? I'm using the Jocko line. Good. All right? I know that's weird. That's crazy. All right. What? Okay. Good can come out of whatever happens. Again, it comes back to maybe that's water on our face. Maybe that makes us become saint. Maybe that makes us focus on becoming the best Catholics we could possibly be. Maybe this makes priests actually not saying they're not. Maybe this makes them want to say the mass even more reverently. Maybe this makes people go out there and evangelize more because the fraternity's got the pretty much a document from Rome saying that they're going to be protected, or ICK probably too. What if you go out there and you start converting that whole area around your parish? Bring them in. There's a lot of good that can come out of it. Yes, it's going to suck a little bit. Okay, embrace the suck. Find me a saint. I got all these saint books. You guys probably have it too. People watching probably got it too. Find me a saint that says, oh, we're supposed to live in lazy boy fashion with our legs spread up and everything good's supposed to happen to us. We're supposed to have money come down from the heavens. We're supposed to live it up and lash it up. Oh, no. All the saints I read, they're talking about pain, suffering, sleeping on the ground, fasting, going after your body. We live in luxury, and everything's kind of handed to us, and everything's good, and we just cry like, something happens, we go in the corner and cry and complain and go tweet it out. This guy's a bad man. But again, goes back to St. John Eudes. It's a punishment. It's an attempt of God's wrath when he sends us priests that are name only. Than are actually good. I mean, it's the laity need to. It's on us, the laity, to become better, to merit, to deserve better from Rome, better from God. To merit, as many priests have said, "Hey guys, look in the mirror. We're not deserving all this. We deserve whatever comes down from heaven for a wrath." People don't like to do that because we don't like ownership. Tell you, we got to start owning up to a lot of this stuff. If it gets bad, say good, bring it on. What else we can do about it? We can either become holier, or we can end up just becoming, bad, cry, name call, anger. I don't see any virtue in any of that. Disobedience. Don't make disobedience a virtue.
Look at old Steve rant. Everybody loves a good Steve rant. That's a good thing. It's an excellent thing. So, John, your response to it. I mean, hey, it's passion. People need to have a fire lit under them. So somebody's got to do it. John, let's hear you.
Amen to what Steve just said. That's my quick and easy response. But I mean, maybe the only other thing to give just in different words the same thought is, what can we do that's useful right now? It is worrying about what potentially might come out of the most touchy pontificate maybe ever probably ever in the history of the church. is that really going to do anybody any good? I mean, anybody that knows Francis and that we can verify, and we say this person knows Francis, knows the way he acts as a pontiff, says that he is so touch and go. It could be one thing one day, a completely different thing the next day. The few sources, Argentinian priests that actually speak to him in Spanish, that know how he runs things, just say he's the most emotional person they have ever met. So that just means that it's going to be one extreme one day, another extreme the next day. So sure, this thing may be on the table. Our heads may be quote unquote on the chopping block if this thing were to be published, but nobody has a clue. Those who really know Pope Francis know that there's no way to tell what he might do an hour from now, much less 4 or 5 months from now. So it's psychologically ridiculous. It's spiritually ridiculous to get hung up on this. It's just ridiculous all the way around. And it's not a good use of our time. I mean, when Padre Pio says that probably the most famous Catholic quote of the past century, pray, hope, and don't worry. Everybody knows what pray means. It's just nobody wants to do it. About maybe half the people understand what hope is. It's looking forward to a future good. What is our future good more than anything else? It is union with God in heaven. So is anything I can do about this projected document, does it have anything to do with true theological virtue of hope? Or even the pagan definition of hope in Aristotle, looking forward to an arduous future good? No, it doesn't. What virtue is the arduous, is that on the natural level, and I wish Fawaz was here to talk about it, is the arduous future good we have to look at on the natural realm. So what am I doing as far as self-denial to try to make myself a person who's more virtuous, therefore more able to take hold of God's grace whenever it's offered? What am I doing? I mean, priest asked me that today in the confessional. So then that's what I have to answer myself. But then don't worry. So that's probably the least examined part of Padre Pio's statement, because worry effectively is what you have as a response to sin ever after the fall. All right, this isn't me. I'm just summarizing what the early church fathers say is the effects of the fall for mankind. What do you have with Adam and Eve after the original sin? You have worry. Oh no, we hid because we were naked and we were de facto what's going on. They're worried about what God's response is to their sin. All right, so the word worry isn't quite as easy to translate in Hebrew or Greek or something, but effectively that's what you have there. And so worry is what we want to get away from. We want to have an absolute confidence in the providence of God, and then we're doing all we can to become better Catholics day in and day out. That's all we can do. So that's all we should be worried about. We can't. Not a single person who's ever going to listen to this show till kingdom come can do a single thing to influence Pope Francis right now, except to pray for him and to become a better saint himself, so that your prayers are more efficacious. So there you go. That's my slight rant.
One final thought. Say everyone gets all worked up right now. Okay, what are you gonna do about it? You can't do jack. It's like what Jonathan just said. Pray, do sacrifice, penance, become a saint. All right, say he dies in the next month or March, or this thing's supposed to be projected to come out in April. What if he dies? Just like that one, the story you read, Pope Fiction by Patrick Madrid. It talks about the one Pope, I forget his name right now, who was going to put out a new Bible, basically, and he dropped dead the day that you're trying to promulgate it. And Patrick goes in and goes, ... the gates of hell will not prevail. Because they're talking about restructuring the newest ordo, too, as well. So what if he drops, then all your worry, as Jonathan just said, is all for naught. And again, look long term. Look at these. Put a picture up of all those guys. They're all white haired. I don't think does Francis even walk anymore? Does the Pope walk? He's in a wheelchair. He's got one lung. He's not in the best of health. Every other week they're talking about him retiring or quitting. You see guys dropping dead all over the place. It's just a matter of time for these guys to meet their maker. And who's going to replace him? It's like there was that one bishop in was it Columbus? And somebody goes, how did Pope Francis put a traditional bishop in Columbus? And the priest goes, he's running out of the bad ones. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of truth to that. We're running out of the ones that hate you, hate us, they hate the movement. Eventually, the guys that you put up in esteem and guys who see a priest now, they will eventually be running the ship. Get ready. You know, there's going to be a good time down the road. What are you going to complain then too? Is there something you're going to find like, oh well, he's not wearing the right amount of lace or whatever? I don't know. Just we're going to find something to complain about. Then I guarantee it. So get that head, find the joy, just like the one bishop of Saint Bernard Theophane, Saint Theophane Bernard. 3 cheers for joy. They were getting killed. Their heads were getting taken off. They still said 3 cheers for joy. Do you have the joy or not?
Yeah, I that's really what it is. No matter what time period you're in, some people will just always be negative, and some people will not be. And of course, John and Steve said it perfectly. There's nothing you can do except tend to your family. Be the If you are the husband and the father, you have to be the king, the priest, and the prophet of your home. And it is up to you, gentlemen, to be the shelter and the shield for your family through these dark times, and don't just look to your priest to fix all your problems. And the ladies who are listening, as the wives, it's your job to support your husband and to protect your kids and to shepherd your kids in union with your husband to get through. You know, because if you think about it, I know I'm the least theological of everybody here. Your home is the first church. You know, as long as your church in your house and everything is working right, then it doesn't really matter what Rome does. All right. If you want to look into it, look at what the underground church in China is doing right now. And poor Cardinal Zen, who's being persecuted in that regard. Right. We have saints. We have 2,000 years of history of saints working through problems that if they looked at us, they would call us sissies or as nice of ways as possible to be like, listen, you guys really just need to pull your bootstraps up and figure it out.
Turn off the internet. You're never good. The only reason why you even know there's problems with roads because you got the internet.
Yeah.
Stop looking at the blogs.
I like to call myself the medieval Catholic. Literally, a medieval Catholic was just working his farm, and he would go to church, and he would come back from church, and he would take care of his family. And they would be like, "Did you hear this latest cardinal? You know, the encyclical." He's like, "I can't read, so it doesn't matter."
Jonathan told me a great line a couple of months ago when I found out about that. Veronica was the woman with blood issue. How many people knew about that? Eusebius brings it up. He goes, because I won't bring up the name. He goes, because of this, I know all the sins of Pope Francis, but I haven't heard about this. Now, what's better for you to bring joy and holiness? I thought that was the coolest thing I heard in a while. But no, what's going to get more clicks? Hey, how bad the Pope stinks and all this. Change your mindset. You got to, as our coaches used to say, get your mind right. Now, what do you want to put in? Garbage in, garbage out. Same thing happens in Catholic. You put garbage in, garbage isn't going to come out.
Yeah, and that stuff's and you got to be careful with social media and the internet and all this other kind of stuff. Obviously we're trying to do good with it, with our show and other shows and people, but it's very easy to become slaves to the algorithm and what gets you clicks and what sells you books and all this other kind of stuff. And this is not a condemnation on anybody, so don't go running around. Not that anybody cares what I have to say anyway, but it's just be careful of taking things in a negative light. We as Catholics, we are not supposed to be negative. That is a sin against charity, a sin against hope. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Let's get to the cry rooms and our saints of the week. So John, saint of the week and a cry room nominee for you, sir.
Well, as one who went to a Russian Byzantine Catholic church for about 7 years of my life, I want to support the Russian Orthodox gentleman and athlete who stood up for at least that particular truth and that beauty of the natural created order. That is the beauty, as you can find a lot of the good modern authors like Dr. Peter Kreeft talks about the good of all sorts of the natural things that God created us with, including generative faculties, and when they're used properly. And so I'll support this Russian Orthodox gentleman in that today, the hockey player, and just say that I think providentially, as we're filming today rather than yesterday, it works out well with today's Byzantine saint on the Byzantine calendar, who's at least in the Gregorian, Euthemius the Great. I mean, he all of his propers in the Byzantine liturgy talk about how he had this great virtue. He shone forth. He was a bright light thanks to his divine virtue, and not easily acquired virtue. So it's something like that where people are going to have make difficult decisions and pursue the arduous good. So definitely that gentleman whose name escapes me now, but the hockey player who said no to the rainbow agenda, who imitates Saint Eusebius, whom, at least in the Gregorian calendar, he would have celebrated today. And then, I mean, it's hard to really pick one out of the WEF to really put in the cry room, but probably the easiest would be Al Gore. So I'm gonna take an easy way out. I mean, Al Gore, poor guy, guy who for longer than pretty much anyone else has been on the climate drums, and yet he still flies private to places like Davos. So you got to at least give a nod to hypocrisy there and put him in the cry room for his. I mean, really, to borrow a phrase from John Kerry, his almost extraterrestrial hypocrisy.
Nice. Well done. Well done there. Steve, who do you have for your Saint of the Week in Cry Room?
I'll go with a former coach. Oh yeah, forgot about these couple of things. Yahoo breaks Universal Digital Payments Network was launched today. So again, told you so. Supreme Court thing. I'm going to go with the saint of the day, Tony Dungy. Yep. Ignores woke mob at March for Life, speaks about power of prayer. People are going out wanting his head on a platter. If you look at the Twitter sphere, all the former people that like him are going, I can't believe that right-wing extremist still has a job. These people are absolutely nuts. Goes with the homo-fascist mafia that are going after the hockey player. Cry room, I'm going to go with Pierce Morgan.
When the vaccines first came along, that they would stop transmission. It seemed to me if you refuse to be vaccinated, you shouldn't be entitled to the same rights to go to nightclubs.
That's a long one. I'll just shorten it down. He was against it, kind of like what's his face from Daily Wire, and then he changed his mind with no reason whatsoever. Basically, was going, they lied to us. I'm going, wow, us morons that don't have jobs like that were able to get in front of this whole thing long ago, and these guys are just coming through. So I'm going with Pierce Morgan.
All right. So for my Saint of the Week, this is a little bit of an out of bounds one, or I'm going to go with Owen Benjamin. Because Owen called out the hypocrisy of one Steven Crowder probably 4 years ago, and warned everybody about his treatment of people and how much of an actor he is and kind of how much of a con artist he is. Of course, nobody can hear from Owen Benjamin because he's kind of been banished. And of course, my cry room, I'm going to put the Daily Wire and Crowder in it because, folks, Crowder's using it to launch his new outlet, and the Daily Wire is just doing shady practices against just doing what corporations do to everybody, which is locking people into contracts and so forth. They're both terrible, and you really shouldn't put your trust in either one of those outlets. It's just part of the big con, which Steven Crowder is supposedly fighting against. But they're both in the cry room as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for News from the Pew. As the banner says, like, subscribe, and share the News from the Pew. We'll talk to you next week. And thanks for joining us, and Viva